Okay, this is take two. Okay, so this is section 7.4 in Big Ideas. I taught this before we left on the Thursday, March 12th, but I was going really fast because I wanted you to see it in case I had to make these videos. I thought it was better to see it live. But we already did this, and then we already had homework on it, but you didn't turn it in yet. So since we're on pause, you would be turning that homework in April. April 20th when we get back. But as for any other assignments, they absolutely are optional. It's just so you can learn, because watching things doesn't help you learn as much as watching and writing, and then watching, writing, and practicing. Every single thing is is helpful to learn. Now, this specific section used to be in Algebra 1, but in our textbooks, our high school textbooks, they don't have it in Algebra 1, but in the middle school textbook, they do have it in Algebra 1. So it's very interesting. Your college professors will expect that you saw this, probably that you saw it in Algebra 1, definitely that you saw it in Algebra 2. So it's definitely something that you want to do and practice. If your family during this time, it's not working for you to get work done, that's okay. And you can always learn the material and practice it in the summer. If you then do the assignments and want me to give you some feedback, feel free to do that. Anyway, so this technically for our class isn't review, but I was going kind of fast. So let me explain it a little more clearly. And then some of you were absent that day. So it was state testing. So I was going to teach it this week to the juniors who weren't there. So I just want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to learn it. Anyway, so this is 7.4 in our Big Ideas book. And the real topic is called rational expressions. Okay, so rational expressions. Okay, I call them algebra fractions. Oops. If I could spell algebra today. So algebra fractions. I already made a video on this, but I made too many errors, and I decided, okay, I'll just start over. Why not, right? Can't really start over class, but I definitely start over a video. Okay, so algebra fractions. The word rational is what kind of links with fractions. And then algebra is because there's letters in it. But visually, when you look at it, you're going to say, oh, it looks like an algebra fraction. And so when you can call it a name, it's much easier to recall the information. I think of it as a file folder. So you have a file folder that you're going to make in your brain with this video, with the notes that you take, with the practice you do, that's called algebra fractions. And when you see one in the future, you'll think, oh, algebra fractions. So how am I going to do that? You might not remember the name rational expressions because that's more like, an official title. But that is the real official math name, rational expression. So that's what we teachers call it. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is adding and subtracting. And adding and subtracting is the most complicated kind of rational expressions. These are called operations on rational expressions. So adding and subtractions, okay, I need to be parallel like in English, right? So adding and subtracting. So let's see. Let me show you how it works. To quickly, just a quick review, just a quick little tiny review from 7.3, which was multiplying, dividing, and simplifying. That was the first video that I had published, and for Algebra 2. And multiplying and simplifying, you did, try to remember the letters. Okay, so that's FFC. And then dividing, we did, what does dividing? What do you do with dividing fractions? So think of like you have 1/2 divided by 4/5. What do you do with the division? Okay, division. So flip, which is called multiply by the reciprocal, but that's a little harder to store in your brain, especially if we're just trying to remember it. So flip FFC. So that's what we call those. Okay. So that was the other video though. So if you want to go back to the other video and kind of practice that and see how it works, those were that. Okay, but we're going to use some of those same letters. So see the FFC? The FFC are actually part of our letters in the new system. So I will show you what it looks like. I have a silly way to remember it. One of my best math teacher friends who recently retired, he was so awesome. He really hated my method. He hated my method because of the name, but I think the name is what helps my students remember it. So, PEMDAS. PEMDAS. Sometimes I write PEMDAS different, or FOIL. Everybody stands for something. So I just made my own up to help my students with the adding and subtracting of the rational expressions. So what it is it's Daffy Duck. Okay, so Daffy Duck. So Daffy Duck comes to the rescue to help you with your algebra fractions. One day, I think I need a video of Daffy Duck. I probably could just click over and search for it online here. But so imagine Daffy Duck like running, look for a video of Daffy Duck running. So he's running to help you with your algebra fractions. Okay, so the initials, and I saw the initials one day and we were trying to think of how one of my classes, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, one of my classes was trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to remember the order? Because I kept just writing out the words. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe we can switch the order of a couple. And if we switch the order and we can still make it work, it'll help the students. Anyway, so these are the letters. Okay, negative, that's not a letter. Okay, so negative, and then FM. So you turn on your radio station in the car, right? FM station, AM station. Usually we listen to FM stations. Okay, so the radio station is named after Daffy Duck. It's called FM DAF, DAF. So that's how you're going to remember the order. Negative, and then FM, and then DAF. Now the FM you do to the bottom of the fraction, which is interesting because it's at the top. And then the bottom 3, you do to the top of the fraction. Okay, so, and then there's one more thing that's kind of silly but helpful. We added this maybe a couple years after I started, and it's Daffy Duck eats Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, that's kind of like a cannibal, but it's not because it's a duck. And a duck's eating a chicken. So technically a duck and a chicken are not exactly the same thing, same species. So anyway, so let me show you where the Kentucky Fried Chicken comes in. There's already an F at the bottom here. Okay, so look at step 5. I'm writing in step 5. So Kentucky Fried Chicken is K. Okay, so K. And then the F is already there in step 6. So KFC. There's my KFC for Kentucky Fried Chicken. Okay, so those are our initials. So the only thing we have to do is learn what each letter stands for. You'll notice from the other video that, oops, that was an erase button. Okay, so you'll notice from the last video, let me kind of highlight it for you, is the last video had F, F, and C. So steps 2 and step 6. So this FFC, don't circle this with your highlighter, but this FFC is actually how we did these, or flip FFC. So it's kind of nice. We made one chart and it works for everything in chapter 7 except for the graphing. So it's kind of cool. I really like it, and it really helps my students do very well on quizzes and tests. This material, only the material that I teach you in class during the closure or before the closure or after the closure would be what we test on. I did teach these sections, so we'll see. We'll see what we're going to do about these. But this will give you a little more opportunity to practice it. But most of all, we want you and your families safe, and we need to give you flexibility about what math that you learn. But this is something that will be important to learn. Okay, so FFC, and you might as well learn it in a way that's easy to understand. Now you can always watch these videos later too. Okay, so anyway, so FFC. Okay, so what did the F stand for in FFC? Okay, so what did the first F stand for? Do you remember my FFC from the other video? Okay, so the first F stood for factor. Okay, factor. Now, why are there 2 factors? So this one also says factor. Now, in FFC, the multiply, simplify, and divide, the FF seemed kind of silly. Why is she making me have 2 Fs? That was because you had to factor the top and factor the bottom. So what's going to be important with the adding and the subtracting is you have to factor the bottom at the beginning, but not factor the top. So if you look at these steps right here, in step 2, next to step 2, I wrote the word factor, but I'm going to write factor the bottom. Now, one mistakes my students used to make on my quizzes is in Algebra 1, when it was in Algebra 1, and also in Algebra 2, especially people who don't write the list when they're doing their homework or taking the test or the quiz, is that they would factor the top. Because at the beginning, when you see it, sometimes the top looks like it factors, and then they would just factor the top. Okay, so first you're going to factor the bottom. You are not going to factor the top until step 6. Okay, step 6. And let me tell you the other thing the C stands for. C stands for cancel, which is what it stood for over in the previous video. So cancel, or this year on Thursday, the day before we left on the closure, one of my students said, oh, we could call it cross out. I was thinking, okay, that might be better than cancel. So that's kind of exciting. Anyway, so let's go back and figure out what the other letters stand for. Okay, the negative. So I'm going to circle the negative in red because usually I do that in another color. Okay, and what I do for that one is this one is called distribute the negative to the whole top of the second fraction. I'll show you what that means. Second fraction. Okay, one thing that's nice about the videos is you can pause and rewind and say, what did she say again? Especially if you can't read my writing. Okay, so distribute the negative to the whole top of the second fraction. So what that's going to look like, let me show you our first example, and then we'll fill in the rest of the steps. But let me show you with the first example what it looks like, and then you can see what I'm talking about, because otherwise you're like, what in the world is she saying? Okay, so this is going to be example 1. Okay. So here's example 1. Now you see that minus sign in the middle? We're going to change that to plus -3. Okay, so let me back that out again. Okay, so let me undo that. This is kind of cool with my technology. Okay, so I'm going to undo that and then put it back. So the minus is going to change to plus a negative. Okay, so plus a negative. Now that's only if it's a minus. So if it's a plus, you don't do step 1. And let me remind you when you saw that before. So say you had 5 minus 3, back when you were very first learning negatives, you would change that to 5 plus -3. That's how we used to do it at the very, very, very beginning of when you learn negatives. But that's been a while, so we don't really do that anymore. But we're going to use that again in this one. Now, it is a distributing situation. So just so you know, if your numerator was, say, 3x minus 4, and there was a minus in the front, okay, and then you have some denominator, you would change that to a plus, and then you would distribute the negative to everybody at the top. This is similar to when you learned this. Negative, say 3x minus 4, and then you distributed the negative, and how you distributed the negative was to change the signs. Okay, so this is the same thing as that. So we're changing the middle to a plus and distributing the negative to the top of the second fraction. Now, if there's 3 fractions and the minus is before the third fraction, that would be the same thing. It's wherever the minus is, you're distributing it to the next fraction. Okay, so this stuff on the side is just to kind of help you understand it, but it's not necessary in your notes, but if it helps you, this is kind of just showing you what you had learned before, and if we could link it to other things, then that might help. Okay, so let's look at the other letters. So step 2 is factor the bottom, which we'll do in a minute, because then we have to remember, well, how do you factor again? Because that was first semester. Okay, M stands for my brother. So I came up with a silly way to do common denominators, but it's super helpful. So anyway, sounds silly though. So step 3 is my brother. I call it my brother. I call it match by multiplying. Okay, and then I will show you how my brother works when we get to that step. Okay, D. What does D stand for in math? What could it stand for? So D, usually my students will come out and they'll say different D words, and then finally somebody says it, and then I repeat it. So D stands for distribute. 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 Now, is that distribute the top or is that distribute the bottom? Okay, it's in the top category. See the top here? Okay, so that's distribute the top, not the bottom. Definitely don't distribute the bottom. Okay, and then the A, what does A stand for? Probably the most famous A word in math. What's the first famous A word in math? So add. The K, let me show you the K off to the side. So I'm going to go to the right of my big X that I just drew. Say you have 3/5 and you add, let's say, 6/5. So this is step 5, but we're going to do it with the algebra fractions. So you add what? I guess I should write here by the word add in my list. In my little blue section, I'm going to call it add the tops, comma. Okay, so what's the K stand for? So you add the tops, but what do you do to the bottom? What could K stand for at the bottom? So K stands for keep. Now this one, you do keep the bottom. So over here, the K for Kentucky is not in reference to the top. Okay, so this K is actually for the bottom. Okay, but it'll make sense when you're doing the problems. Okay, so we have our steps. I'm going to do step 3 and step 1, both in another color. Step 3 is my brother, and you are matching the bottoms. So we could write that as well, but basically you are matching the bottoms because you're in your bottom section. Okay, so that's really what step 3 is finding a common denominator. But the my brother way of finding a common denominator is really helpful. Okay, so let's see. So we do need to factor. Okay, so let me write the steps out in example 1. Okay, so for example 1, step 1, and then I'm going to number the steps, but usually when you're doing your own homework or practice questions, you don't really have to put the numbers, but when I'm explaining it, it's going to help. Okay, so try to remember who's to the rescue. Who's to the rescue? And who's to the rescue is DAF. DAF for Daffy. Okay, so what radio station? So Daffy Duck. Is that on AM or FM? So we're going to call that FM. FM, and then Daffy Duck eats Kentucky Fried Chicken, but the F's already there. Okay, so KFC. And then you do want to label the tops and the bottoms. We added that a few years later, and it made it so much easier. The grades on those tests and those quizzes went up so much. It was really awesome. And then, I grade partial credit, so I see where people are making their errors. Okay, so I just usually abbreviate top and bottom. And remember, it's opposite, so it's kind of silly. The bottom 3 are for the top, and the top 2, or 2 and 3, are for the bottom. Okay, so we'll check mark as we go. Okay, so the first one, and you're going to want to leave yourself a little bit of space. So you should probably leave a little gap. So you're going to write it where I write it over here. So you're going to want a little gap in the front of this fraction. Okay. And let's see. I'm going to write it below, but depending on how close you are to your X, you're going to need a little bit of space on the left side, and you're going to need a little bit of space on the right side of your fraction. Okay, so just leave enough space so that you can fit it. So I moved it down just so I wasn't in the way of my X. Okay, so how do we factor? So we might want to make a list, a little factoring list. So my factoring list, where should I write it? Let me zoom out and let me write it up here at the top. Okay, so this is a reminder of our factoring steps. Okay, so factor, because you haven't done that since first semester. Okay, so usually in Algebra 1, I would teach this chapter right after I taught factoring, because then everybody remembered how to factor, and then it was kind of nice. But it's a good review. It's a good review of factoring. Okay, so factoring. The first thing we did for factoring is we looked for a GCF. That's when you put something in the front, and then you are like reverse distributing. Step 2. And this is in your notes from first semester. I think it's chapter 3. GCF, factoring that's the first one. And then step 2, we called it count terms. And I should probably make a video on this to help too. So count terms. So if there were 2 terms, there was a name. There were 2 names actually for that. If there were 3 terms, we didn't really have a name. 4 terms had a name. Does anybody remember what that name was? Okay, it was called grouping. Okay. And then for step 2, that was dose, if it was a minus. And then there were other types, so I'll kind of put a mark down here. There were other types of 2s. The other types of 2s were sum of cubes and difference of cubes. Okay, but those aren't used too much in these problems. So mostly in the problems, you're going to do 3 terms. You're going to do a 2-term dose and then a GCF. So those are the usual type of factoring that we do in these problems in section 7.4. Okay, so let's take a look. So I'm going to go back to our example. And at any point, remember, if I'm going too fast, what's nice is in class, you can't pause, but you can't pause me, right? You're like, wait, Miss Nichols, what was that again? You can't pause me because I always zoom in and show you. But sometimes people are embarrassed to pause me during class because it'll bother the other students. But hey, this is you're watching it at home. And you can also forward me. So if I'm too slow for you, you can definitely put me on 1.5 speed. I was listening to 1.5 speed and 2 speed, and it was so funny. Anyway, and then I tried to listen to 0.5 speed. That was pretty funny too. Anyway, so you should try it out on the YouTube video. Also, if it's not clear, if my words are not clear, I did record it on high def. So you just have to change your YouTube settings. You click the little settings thing, and then you can choose. Okay, so let me get away from the factoring and go up here. So which type of factoring is this first one? So what I'm looking at is I'm looking at this denominator right at the moment. Okay, so x squared minus 9. So what kind is that? Is there a GCF? They're not a GCF. So what we did is in our class, we put 2 lines and a times. 2 lines and a times. So this would be x and x. And then what would 9 be? 3 and 3. Okay, so how that factors is the first x goes in the first parenthesis at the beginning, and then the other x goes in the first of the second parenthesis. And then the 3's go in the second parenthesis. Let me not put those in red. We're going to have another reason for the red, so let me get back to black. Okay, so this is 3 and 3. Now I'm going to put dose. Okay, the reason I'm going to put dose is because that reminds me of the OS. Now, dose means difference of squares. Okay, remember I saw that in another teacher's classroom on the board, and I thought, oh, well, that's cool. Dose. I didn't think dose, actually. I thought difference of squares, because that's what it meant to me. And then when I was writing it in my class, one of my students, his name was Andrew, and this was years ago, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and he wasn't really paying attention. So he looks at the board and he says, oh, why did you write a Spanish word on the board? And it was dose. And then I said, okay, well, hey, that's kind of perfect. 2 terms. And then, I don't know, a couple years later, I was looking at the OS and I thought, S could remind us of opposite signs. So just to remind us. So anyway, they have opposite signs. I just filled in the bottom of the fraction that we're working on. Okay, so that's a dose. And then what did we do for these 3? They're called trinomials. Like I said, they don't really have a great name. In my class, I always call them boxes when I teach Algebra 1, but most of you did not have me for Algebra 1, so we just wrote check in the middle. And then whatever way you learned, it works with this check way. So we said make x and x, or whatever way you need to make x squared. And then 3 can be 3 and 1, or 1 and 3. If that 3 was a bigger number, like say 36, then you have a lot of choices, right? You'd have 3 times 12, you'd have 2 times 18, 1 times 36, 6 times 6, 9 times 4, 6 times 6, not 6 times 9. So you'd have a lot more possibilities. Okay, but in this case, it's only 3 times 1. So I don't need to worry about all this. Okay, so 3 times 1. So that's the only one that's going to work in this case. And 3 plus 1 is 4, so I feel like it's going to be a good choice. So you put the x's in the front. And then the 3 and the 1 you put in the back. And then you need to design it so your signs, when you distribute, will give you negative 4x. So you have to think about how you're going to do that. You don't have to draw the loops I drew. I call this smile chin. Okay, smile chin. A smile chin check. So you don't have to draw that, but at least in your brain, you kind of want to loop those in case there's a number in front of x. Okay, so to get negative 4x, I would need both to be negative. So your check is always checking to get this middle term in the middle. Okay, so your guesses come from the outside, and then your check comes from there. I'm going to erase the smile chin, just because it's not helpful for us as we go through the fraction more. So I'm going to erase this. Erase the smile. Erase the chin. I did learn the smile chin at Diamond Bar High School because that's where I took Algebra 1. You know, I was a Walnut High School student. I was at Suzanne. I was at Vehar. But I did take summer school 1 year in Algebra 1. Okay, so let's see. Now that we have the factoring done. Okay, so this is what's new. Not new because we kind of did it before the break, but new except new from the factoring. Okay, so let's go back and see what steps I did. I did the minus, I did the factor. Now, what did I factor? I only factored the bottom. M. So this is the my brother part. Now, the my brother part, I don't know. Hopefully, I can explain this well on a video. I don't know if I'll have to make another video later where I'm pointing at it, because this is usually where I go up to the TV and I start pointing at things. So let's see if I can manage it from here. Okay, so this is going to be me. Okay, so I'm the bottom of this fraction. So I'm yellow, and my brother's blue. Okay, and what I call the M step, okay, and we can write this over here on the left side. So what the M step is my brother. Okay, but what I call that is I want what my brother has. He also wants what I have. Okay. So when we're looking at this, look at the yellow. Okay, so the yellow is me. I'm looking over at my brother, so I'm looking at the blue. Okay, so here's my brother, the blue. I'm the yellow. I look at my brother and I say, wait a minute, he has a PlayStation 1. He has an X minus 1. I want an X minus 1. So in red, I'm going to put an X minus 1 in the denominator. Now I'm going to put an X minus 1 in the denominator. I'm also going to put an X minus 1 in the numerator. The reason for the X minus 1 is because in blue, he had an X minus 1 and I want it too. What allows me to put it on the top and the bottom is back to what we learned in fractions a long time ago. So I'm going to write this off to the side. Say I had 5 over 2, and I wanted to change the bottom. Say I wanted to multiply by 3. You could multiply the bottom by 3 to make a new fraction, but you also had to multiply the top by 3. To make an equivalent fraction. So you are allowed to multiply the same thing in both. Where that comes from is it actually comes from chemistry. It comes from chemistry because when you do conversions, multiplying by 3 over 3 is really just multiplying by 1. So in chemistry, that's where maybe they do, you multiply by 10 centimeters over, I guess it's 10 centimeters is... it's not 10 centimeters, right? What is it? That's 100 centimeters. I am a math teacher. That's funny. Okay, so 100 centimeters is 1 meter, and you could multiply by that because it's really 1. It's called unit conversions. Okay, so back to our problem. Look at the blue. So my brother, he looks at me. Okay, so he looks at me and he says, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What does she have? Yellow is she. That's me. What does she have that I don't have? Okay, well, she has an X plus 3. So I want an X plus 3. So you put an X plus 3 on the bottom here and an X plus 3 at the top here. So the X plus 3 on the top and the bottom is because we're doing the conversions over here. So this is the Y. We're allowed to do it, but you don't have to. You don't have to actually write that over on the side. Okay, you can if you want, though, if it helps you. Okay, so what step are we on? I just did my brother. That's all my brother is. My brother is that we need to match. And we need to match by multiplying. And what I put at the bottom, I have to put at the top as well. Okay, D. Now, this is the super long first example, but once you get it, the other examples are going to go by a lot faster. Okay, so D. D is what? Try to remember what D stood for. Okay, so D stands for distribute. Distribute what? Distribute the top. Okay, distribute the top. That's 5x minus 5. Your denominator, you're going to keep your denominator here. That's not really the k. That's just because I haven't done anything with it. You're going to distribute the negative 3. So try to do that ahead of me. Negative 3x minus 9 over my denominator, my brother's denominator. Okay, so that was the D step. We just did the D step. Now we're on the A step. A. A what? A is add. Add what, though? That's why we labeled the left side. So over here, where the left side is labeled top, okay, that's add the tops. So you're going to add the tops. So to add the tops, I'm going to add the 5x, and I guess I shouldn't make them look like they cross out, the 5x and the negative 3x, and that would be 2x. And then I'm going to add the negative 5 and the negative 9, which is negative 14. And the colors, the wiggles and stuff of the colors, I'm just using so I can show you on the video to make sure you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so I added the tops and I K'd. I also K'd. K is keep the denominator. So you don't write all 6 of those in the denominator. You just write one set. And you're only allowed to add if they match. Okay, now we're on FC. F what? Okay, so F what? F the top, F the bottom. Okay, so over here, I'm going to highlight in yellow. This is the top section, even though it's at the bottom. Okay, so F the top. So what's F mean? F means factor. Factor the top. Okay, what kind is this one? So if I kind of look back up at my factoring list, so look back up at your factoring list. If you look back up at your factoring list, step 1 is maybe a GCF. See step 1, GCF? Okay, let's try a GCF. So what's a GCF look like? Something in the front and then something else? Number, letter, what do you think? Okay, so 2. And then x minus 7. Right, because you have to think what was there. X minus 1, x plus 3, and x minus 3. I did my F step. Now I have to do my cancel step, my cross out step. Does anything cross out? Nope. So then that's your final answer. If you're taking the SAT or you're taking a test in college, you just want to know, does my professor want me to distribute it out? If it was multiple choice, that's perhaps possible that you'll need to do that. Okay, now we're going to do example 2. It's going to be way faster than example 1, probably like 5 minutes. Okay, but I just needed to explain to you the process, and it's pretty complicated. Okay. That one's too complicated. So let me do this example first, and then we'll do example 3. We'll switch the order that I did in class. So if you do have your class notes and you're just listening to this as another explanation, this is actually was our example number 3. Okay, but I figure video notes are way better than, I mean, you're not going to know what the explanation is, right? You just read it and you're like, but where did they get everything and in what order? Because math is pretty complicated. Okay, so we're going to write down the list. Oh, and we have this timer. Okay, let's see. How long does it take? Negative, F, M, D, A, F. Bottom 3 are for the top. Top 2 here are for the bottom. And that was 12 seconds. Okay, so I've always wondered. It's funny because some of my students will say, Ms. Nichols, do I need to write the letters? Oh, I forgot the KFC. Shoot. Do I need to write the letters on the test, on the quiz? And usually I absolutely say you need to. I give you 1 point for it on every single problem. Why? Because I know if you have a checklist, it makes it easier. A 12-second checklist. Well, 15 seconds if you include the F and the K and the C. Okay, so you don't have to put the numbers. Okay, but if I do refer to them, I will refer to the numbers. Okay, so let's see. So do I have a minus? So look in the middle here. Do you have a minus? I don't have a minus. So that means you do not do step 1. So we're going to put NA. Okay, so if you have a plus, you don't do step 1. Step 1 is change the middle minus to a plus and distribute that to the top of the second fraction. So I do not do that. I'm erasing the yellow highlight. Okay, F. Now this one says F the bottom. Okay, so F the bottom, that's a hard step for students who are a little struggle with factoring, but this will give you practice with your factoring skills. Okay, so you're going to do the factoring. This has 3 terms. I'm going to write the word check in the middle. So you're looking for numbers that multiply to be 25. Okay, so 5 and 5, 1 and 25, maybe reversed. x and x. And which way am I going to get a 10? 25 and 1, I don't think 25 and 1 is going to give me a 10. So I'm thinking that I should use the 5 and the 5. And then the x and the x. So where you put them, just a reminder from first semester, you put the x in the front, you put the x in the front, then you put the 5s in the back. And then my smile chin idea is supposed to give me this negative 10x in the middle. Okay, so 5 and 5 will give me a negative 10x, but it's only going to give me a negative 10x if both my signs are negative. Now, does that multiply to be positive 25? It does, so we're good. You can erase the smile in the chin, and you can also do the smile in the chin just in your head. There's no reason that you have to do it. You can also leave it. If you leave the smile in the chin there, it's not going to hurt you. Okay. We are allowed to have a quiz on this material because I did teach it before the break, but who knows what's going to happen. So I would just say, stay caught up. If no one's sick in your family, stay caught up. Might as well keep learning. That's why you're in school anyway. We wanted to learn, right? That was the whole purpose of all your years in school, all the way from kindergarten. So if you can learn, it would be helpful to learn this, okay? And the other things I'm teaching you as well. Later on, when we do the stats chapter, that'll be, hit or miss. If you want to do that, that wouldn't be something that maybe all your college professors would expect that you have. Probability, you'd probably rather hear my explanation than just go straight into stats without hearing a probability explanation in Algebra 2. Algebra 2 always has probability in it. Okay, but let me not ramble. Let me finish the problem. Okay, so this one. Anyway, so this one is a GCF. So GCF, so what's my GCF there? That means the GCF is in the front. So what's my GCF? I think 2 goes into 2 and 10. There's no letter on the 10. So this 10 right here has no x. So then you don't put an x in the front. Okay, distribute, backwards distributing, x, and then minus, how am I going to get a 10? 2 times what? So that'd be 2 times 5. Okay, so it looks good. So I did the F step. I did F the bottom. Now I'm on M. Okay, M is my brother. Okay, so my brother. It's so funny because usually I'm at school and now my brother, he's in the next room. So I wonder, I should show him this and see what he thinks. I've never shown him my method. He does love math, so it'll be funny. I should give him the problem and see if he remembered how to do it from the beginning. And then we'll see. And if he doesn't remember, then I'll show him the whole method and then I'll make him laugh with my brother. Okay. I don't think he'll be like a guest here on my video. Okay, so let's see. So I'm the yellow, my brother's the blue. I need to make our bottoms match. So I'm going to change colors, and I would suggest that you change colors as well. Otherwise, sometimes you'll put something in the denominator, and then you don't put it in the numerator if you're not using the 2 colors. So the M. So I'm the yellow. I look at my brother, and I say, hey, my brother has an x minus 5. Oh, but I have an x minus 5, so that's all good. He has a 2. I don't have a 2, so I want a 2. So I'm going to put a 2 in the denominator. Okay, and you're only looking at the denominators. You're only looking at the bottoms to do the matching. Okay, now my brother, he's the blue. So my brother looks at me and he says, hey, she has 2 PlayStation 5s. I only have 1. So what do you think? I want what my brother has. He wants what I have. We're very selfish in this scenario with these problems. So yes, my brother wants 2 PlayStation 5s if I have 2 PlayStation 5s. So this one does need an extra PlayStation 5 here. You put it in the denominator, you have to also put it in the numerator. You have now gone through the hardest part of the problem. The rest of the problem is pretty smooth if you have the list. So make the list. That 12 seconds or 15 seconds to write that list is going to make it so much easier to do the problem. It's like somebody telling you every single step on the way. So D is distribute. Distribute what? Distribute the top. So distribute the top on this one. Distribute the top on the second one. Didn't say anything about the bottom, so I'm just going to leave it. And you could write that as 2 parentheses x minus 5 squared, but I would not suggest it until later. So I definitely don't do it right now. So I don't do anything with the bottom. I just keep it the same. So I did the distribute. Then it's A. A what? Okay, A the top. Okay, so A the top. Do I have any like terms? Looks like the negative 15 and the 30 are like terms. So that would be 3x plus 15. What do I do with the denominator? Now with multiplying, it would have been different, but with fractions, when you're adding and subtracting, you keep the common denominator, okay? Still have no plans to write that as a squared, okay? And that's actually because of the last step. The last step here, I did my A, I did my K. I'm on F. F what? F the top. Okay, so then I have to look at my factoring list again. So step 1 is a greatest common factor, which is what this one has. But the greatest common factor ones are harder to see usually for students. X and then plus 5. Once somebody tells you it's a greatest common factor, then you can do it. But sometimes it's hard to identify a greatest common factor. Okay, so I have this. Now I did my F, and now I'm doing my C, my cancel, my cross out. I can't cross out anything. I can't cross out anything because the x minus 5s do not cross out with the x plus 5. Now, it is possible. I'm going to put or. You could distribute this if you wanted, but really only if you're taking a multiple choice test or that's what your college professor does. And you could write it like this, or sometimes people multiply out the bottom. Okay. But as a calculus teacher, and somebody who's done math way past Algebra 2, I would say my favorite method, my favorite way to leave it, the way that I would want you to leave it, would be the way that I boxed. Okay, but it just depends. You want to make sure that whatever your teacher wants and your professor in college wants is the way that you do it. Okay, so this video is getting so long, I'm just rambling. Okay, so example 3. Example 3. And it makes sense. This is one of our class periods. Someone was telling me, she had changed teachers, and she said, changed teachers because I taught her last year in Algebra 1, and she told me, I really liked how you did notes the whole period. And I was thinking, oh, that just sounds so horrible. Like, how would anybody really want the notes the whole period? But, I just show every little detail, and then, I look at your homeworks later. So you will be able to upload your practice questions on Google Classroom. Either on our official Google Classroom, or if you're not actually in my class and you want me to look at your work, I've made a new Google Classroom that's associated with my Miss Jennifer Nichols YouTube address. And so you could add yourself to that Google Classroom of mine, and then I could look at your work if you're interested, if you're not an actual student of mine, either not at Walnut High School or, not at Walnut High School or not in my class, and you're interested in learning. Okay. Anyway, this is our last example. Okay, this is our last example of this type. And then I do want to give you, that negative is actually in the middle. So let me write that better. That's in the middle of the two fractions. And then there are some more examples that I want to give you, but I prefer to wait until you practice some questions. And then we'll have like a supplemental video on this that has some other questions that will help, okay? So we'll just call that video number 2. But you definitely want to practice after this. I won't give too many practice questions, but enough so you could see, okay, I get it. And then I'll make it more complicated, okay? So we'll just call that like day 2, second day. Okay, so what are we going to do with this one? Minus. Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the list. Not because I'm doing it for points, but really because I want to remember it. So negative fmdaf, KFC. The bottom ones you do to the top, and these two top ones you do to the bottom. It's kind of cool. Okay, so this minus in the middle, what do you do? Make it a plus, change the signs of both things at the top. I like the other color so I could see what it used to be. When I don't see what it used to be, I forget if I did it to both things in the numerator or just one thing, which is in the front. Okay, F. F the what? Now, this is the key one. See this F step right here? Do you see this 2x plus 3? You should not F that 2x plus 3. Very many times on my quiz, there's a problem like this, and somebody puts 2 parentheses x plus 3, which is super awesome that you know how to factor that, but you're not supposed to. When is F the top? F the top is way down here at the bottom. That's my step 6. So I am not supposed to F the top early. And if you F the top early, the problem doesn't work. Okay? It just doesn't work, and it ends up having way more work for you to do. So we're on the F step, but specifically we're taking the F of the bottom. Now what was F? F was factor. This one is a dose. And you might want to pause it and see if you can do each step, and then you can check and listen to my explanations. Okay, this is one of those check ones. Line, line, check, line, check. Okay, so a dose is 2 lines. Okay, 2 lines. So x and x, 5 and 5. And doses have to be minuses. So right now I'm just doing the denominators. So x and x, 5 and 5, plus and minus. Plus, okay. I'll write the numerators in a minute, but let's just focus on the denominators. To get 5, it's only 5 and 1. 5 and 1 are 1 and 5, so that one's kind of boring, which is the best kind for factoring, the boring ones that don't have 900 million possibilities. Okay, so 5 and 1. And then my check is I'm supposed to get this middle term. Okay, so that's minus minus, so that my smile and my chin, negative 5x, negative 1x, give me my negative 6x. Now, if that factoring was too fast for you, somebody I was meeting with in the mornings understood all the rest, my brother, the distributing, the adding. The only thing he was having trouble with is the factoring part because he didn't remember that from the beginning of the year. So pause, rewind, double check, how am I going to get that done? Or like I said, maybe I'll make a supplemental factoring video if any of you guys want that. Okay, so we're back here. And then I'm just writing my numerators. I'm not changing my numerators right now. I guess this is a minus if I wanted to put that. Okay, so now I did my factor the bottoms. I did my minus, my distributing, m. So m is the fun one. So m is my brother. So my brother, so there's me, I'm in yellow. My brother is here in blue, just so you could visualize. So I look at my brother, and my brother, hey, my brother has an x minus 5. I have an x minus 5. Do I need to get an extra one? No, he only has one. I have one. Seems fine. And of course, this is such a silly example because really, why do both my brother and I both need an x minus 5 or a PlayStation 5? Why don't we just play together? Okay. But anyway, it helps us do the problem, so we're going to call it that. Okay, so what does my brother have that I don't have? Okay, I want what my brother has. So my brother has an x minus 1. I don't have an x minus 1. So you're going to put it on the top and the bottom. Okay, over here, the blue. Now, focus on the blue. You're looking at the blue denominator. That's your brother. My brother is looking over at me, who's the yellow. I want what I don't have. He wants what he doesn't have. So he looks at me and he says, wait, she has an x plus 5. I don't have an x plus 5. I need one. Okay, and that's how I find common denominators. So I don't find common denominators the regular way. There is another way that the book shows, but I don't think it's as helpful. So I like to do it my brother way, and it really has helped my students over the years. Now, I'm on distribute. The only problem with distribute is that's a lot of distributing, isn't it? So I have to do like the FOIL distributing. Okay, so x to the 1 times 2x to the 1 is 2x to the 2. X to the 1, and you should pause it and try to do all your distributing and then check if you're right. Okay, so plus 6x, because usually I pause more in class. And then minus 6, I'm distributing first the x times the 2x, then the x times the 6, negative 1 times the 2, negative 1 times the 6. Okay, over, and then you keep the denominator. I don't change the denominator until it tells me to. Plus, and I guess it never tells me to. Okay, so that's negative 3x to the second. That's because there's little 1 exponents here. And then minus 15x. That's this one. And then minus 5x. Minus 25. And then the denominator is the same. Okay. Okay, so I did the distributing. Now I A. A what? A the tops. Okay, so let's find common denominators. I kind of like this highlighting thing. Okay, so 2x squared. Do I have any other like terms? Oh, there's my like term. Okay, so there's my like term, so that's negative 1x squared. Okay, let's see. Who else is a like term? Oh, I could do blue. I've got this and this. Okay, I think it looks better in regular highlighter. You don't have to use the highlighters. You don't have to be all color-coded like me. I'm not this color-coded in class usually, but I can't point, so it's a little bit different. Okay, so that's 4x. 4x minus 20x, that's negative 16x. And then I'll circle these. Negative 6, negative 25, that is negative 31. And then you K. Oh, I was on A, K, I already did that. I F'd. Oh, no. Oops. Oh, my head. Okay, so I'm on K. K, the denominators. So x minus 1, x plus 5, x minus 5. It doesn't matter which order, and you're only allowed to do this if they match. But supposedly you made them match in step 3. Technically on the F step, I should factor out this negative. Okay, most people don't like to have negatives in the front. So I should factor out a negative. So that's x squared plus 16x plus 31. Don't do anything to the bottom at the moment. And then x minus, let's see, does anything cancel? Can I factor this top one? I don't know. I don't think so. It says 31. What's the only way to get 31? 1 and 31. Are there any other factors? 2, no. 3, no. 4, no. 5, no. 6, no. I don't think that factors. I think it's a prime number. So that would be the only possibility. And if you make it x and 31 and then x and 1, is your smile and chin going to give you 16x? Yeah, no, it's not. So then that would be the answer. So I would take on a test this answer for full credit, or I would take the above answer for full credit since nothing canceled. But you never know if more is going to cancel. So you really have to go through all the steps. And then you could always distribute back if it happens to be like that. Anyway, so this is a long video, 50. Dang. But you know, my tablet and uploading it to YouTube is way better than computers. Yesterday, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, I think it was 3 days ago, I made some videos and I kept pausing it because my puppies were fighting. And when I was pausing it, it was, when I went back and I hit a button, somehow it stopped the video. So I was doing a math analysis one. And so I had already split a video into 3 parts. And so this was like the 3rd part. So then this video was going to be in 3 parts. I was like, that's so stupid. So I was trying to stitch them together. So I was looking up these apps. I was sending it to all my, expert friends. My brother is awesome at videos. And so I was having him try to do it in his program. It's called Camtasia. Sent it to one of my computer techie friends. Crashed a couple of his computers because the files were so big. Finally, I decided, you know what? There's got to be a way on my Android. So I was trying to do it on my Android tablet, which I have, which is what I write on. But the video player wasn't doing it. But on my phone, on my Note 9, I think I have a Note 9 or Note 8. I think it's a 9. It took me a half an hour after it had taken me 3 days, basically 3 days of like torture that I couldn't get it to work. And then it made a 1 gigabyte file and then it uploaded to YouTube in a half an hour. And it was amazing. It took me like, I don't know, 40 minutes to stitch them together. It wasn't me. The phone was working. I was, doing something else, but it took the phone 40 minutes plus like maybe a half an hour to upload it to YouTube. Anyway, it was awesome after it had taken multiple days and multiple advice from other people and it wasn't working at all and it was crashing their computers. Anyway, so I forgot my point, but hopefully you enjoy these videos. I know this one's a long one. You have to like pause, or maybe if you put me on fast forward, then in the future it'll be good. But it'll be nice because you can review, you can rewind, you can say, where did she get that? Instead of if you look at it right now. So look at it if you were just copying another student's notes. Okay, so let me zoom out for a minute. If you were copying another student's notes, you really don't know where anything came from and at what point we wrote it. So these live notes are going to be much better for you. And that's why I'm doing this one again. Even though most of you were here, I could just post these notes, but they wouldn't have made any sense. Now it's a video, so they'll make sense. The only problem is I better try to make these videos shorter or you're going to see a 53-minute video and say, no, Miss Nichols, I'm not doing that. Anyway, I hope you made it to the end. Miss you guys. It's so weird teaching to myself. I should put the puppies over on the side so that I could teach to them, but I don't think they're going to know as much as you. Definitely, they're not going to know as much as you. Okay, love the interaction with you, and I hope you're all safe.